Physics Bites,
a science podcast in English
by the students of Notre-Dame d'Ascension.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of Physics Bites, our English language podcast from the students of Notre-Dame d'Ascension here in Paris. We're continuing with one of our final episodes in the carbon emissions projects that our junior students are doing. As usual, I have 4 new students here who are going to introduce themselves.
Hello, I'm Alexandre.
Hello, I'm Maelys.
Hello, I'm Mathis.
Hi, I'm Myriam.
And we have Myriam. So we have 4 students, and I have a new co-host. Co-host, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hello, I'm Pauline.
All right. So this time we're going to be talking about industry, all the pollution coming from industry. So I'm going to leave it to you guys to give us a short introduction of the different main axes of your topic, and then we'll go into questions.
During our presentation, we focused on the 4 industries that emit the most, namely cement, petrochemicals, high-tech, and textile.
Right. So high-tech, petrochemicals, cement, and textiles. So which of the 4 is the biggest polluter? Let's get into some numbers maybe.
I think that it was cement, and the second one is maybe petrochemical industry.
We know it's cement because the buildings group was talking about it, and they had that statistic where if cement was a country of its own, it'd be the 3rd biggest polluting country after the US and China. Okay. What about the other sectors? So textile, high-tech, and petrochemicals. What is the sort of carbon emissions? Maybe we just start with a few numbers here, yeah? Alexandre?
Yes, so for petrochemicals, we know that the emissions is about 4 billion tons of CO2 per year. So it's very large, and you can add it with the fossil fuels.
So we're clear. When we talk about the petrochemical industry, what are we talking about? What is included in the petrochemical industry in general?
We talk about fossil fuels. So the first
Oil and
right, so like the energy part, right? So whether it's gas for like household consumption, oil for whatever, but also many other things which are derived from petrol.
They use like medicines, food colorings, cosmetics, fertilizers, pesticides.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of chemistry actually in the petrochemical industry. Okay, and then we talked about high-tech and we talked about textiles. So high-tech I think we can maybe put aside because the internet group kind of talked about it a little bit. Maybe we can focus more on textiles.
Yes. Per year, 3 or 4 billion tons of CO2 that emits in atmosphere,
which is comparable to petrochemicals, so it's a big chunk of it. What else? What are the main reasons, for example, the textile industry produces so much carbon emissions? Where is it coming from? Because I think we can sort of imagine cement. The buildings group talked about it. It's the actual process, uses up a lot of energy. The reaction actually produces carbon dioxide. We can imagine why the petrochemical industry also uses it. Textiles, I think it's not the first thing that comes to mind. Why is textiles producing so much carbon emissions? What sort of processes are there in there that are so polluting?
First, the way to recover the materials to create new textiles are really polluting. Like, for example, to create something with wool, we have to emit 11 to 12 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram of wool.
Right, because I remember in your presentation you had a list of worst to best, and the worst one was wool. Do you want to maybe give us a little idea of what we meant by worst to best, and give us which ones are the worst and which ones are the best in general?
Going from worst to best, we got wool, which is equivalent to 12 kilograms of CO2 per kilogram created. Then we got conventional cotton, then synthetic fibers, organic cotton, and finally recycled fabrics.
Right. Just so we can get an idea, when we're talking about recycled fabrics, how much emissions per kilogram is there?
It's about 1 to 5 kilogram, depending on the first material.
Right. So it could be as little as 10 times less than, for example, wool. So that was something we heard in our last episode as well. Recycling, the importance of it is very, very high. Why is wool and cotton so polluting? What's causing them to be so polluting?
Because the first thing we have to know is that as it's from biological resources, like
Animals, basically sheep, yeah.
we have to feed them, we have to entertain, take care of them in order to have good quality and large amount. So in order to do that, we have to spend a lot of time, energy, and therefore
Resources as well.
CO2.
Okay, so the reason is actually rather indirect. It's because of the source where it's coming from. Whereas, for example, synthetic fibers, they have processes, reactions that use up energy, but you're saying that overall that's less energy intense than actually raising the animals which are going to produce the material, which is kind of counterintuitive, because in our minds you think, oh, we want to go organic, you want to live in a good, clean way, so maybe cotton and wool is better than synthetic fibers. But you're saying that when it comes to carbon emissions, synthetic fibers, if we don't have reusability possible, are actually less polluting than normal organic cottons and tissues.
Yeah, they're not really good, but it's better.
Right, so which is less carbon intensive, needs lower temperatures, and it's going to emit less carbon. Let's talk briefly, nevertheless, about high-tech. The high-tech industry. What do we mean by the high-tech industry? Like, what are the different things that are sort of included in what we call high-tech industry?
In the high-tech industry, we have all the construction and the building of the computers, the data centers, and all the technical materials. We have also the uses of these technical materials that are polluting and emitting carbon. But of course, the most important part of the carbon emission in the tech industry is the construction of the data centers that are huge and uses of thousands of computers to run and to work.
So when we're talking about high tech and data centers and all that, to compare it with the internet group, you're talking more about the emissions from the production side of things, whereas they were talking about the emissions from just the functioning as well, which is a big part of it. You're talking about the actual production of it, which is quite energy intensive, especially because we're making a lot of these things, right? More and more. It's a very fast-growing industry with all the consumption that we have in there. Maybe we can come back maybe a bit more to petrochemicals, just because it's the one thing we've talked the least about. So I think that the petrochemical part also overlaps a little bit with textiles, right? Because a lot of the synthetic fibers we're talking about. Does one of you guys want to talk about that a little bit, maybe?
So petrochemicals are used for a lot of things, as we said earlier, and in those uses we have fertilizers and pesticides that can be used for production of biological resources, so wool and cotton, and those uses in petrochemicals are coming from fuels that are really the processes of making those kind of objects or like resources are really polluting. So when you use it in textile industry, first the production of those way to, like for example, grow food faster, are very emitting, and that's all. Like it's the only thing that overlaps with textile. therefore, we also have the fact that
are there like synthetic fibers which are better or worse than other ones? Because we do have most of our cheap clothes is made from synthetic fibers, right? Most of what you guys were calling fast fashion is mostly synthetic fibers as well. Are there ones which are worse than the others when it comes to carbon emissions, or better? Is there something I should look for when I'm looking at the little tag on the t-shirts that I'm buying? Is it something I should avoid?
Yeah, to answer to your question, there is some types of textiles, handmade from human-made textiles from petrochemicals that are better than other ones. For example, I know that polyester is recyclable.
Right.
So that's really interesting. But at the opposite, elastan.
I think in English we call it spandex.
Spandex is not recyclable.
So what you would consider good or bad synthetic fiber depends mostly on its recyclability.
Yeah.
But I think, Pauline, you wanted to ask a question.
When you're saying textile, I've heard that you mentioned in your presentation that we can use AI like digital fashion to dress with a more ecological way. Can you more precise about it?
So the use of AI in order to reduce emissions from textiles. Yes. Interesting question. Maelys.
As we explained in our presentation, digital fashion helps to reduce carbon emissions during the manufacturing of the garment model, since it avoids polluting stages in the garment's life cycle, such as exploitation or raw materials on waste.
So you're talking about the idea that we can use sort of more intelligent manufacturing processes, which would use less human intervention, and therefore on the ethical side of it, I suppose it's better, and also it would be more optimized than if humans were doing it in a way?
Yes, but the digital fashion uses energy, so since it only uses digital technology, so it's, emits CO2, but on a much smaller scale.
Right. In any case, I don't think we're capable anymore of doing stuff that doesn't emit any carbon. The question is how to reduce it and reduce it in a considerable way. You guys talked about fast fashion at some point also. Do you guys want to maybe talk about the impact of fast fashion on the carbon emissions from the textile industry?
Yeah, the major problem of fast fashion is that, for example, when you going to haute couture places, you will buy like maybe the collection will change every year or every 2 years, but in not every, but a lot of fast fashion brand, they are releasing every 2 or 6 weeks new collections, and that push to consume more, and then to never wear again those clothes.
So just so people like me who know nothing about fashion in any way, whether it's fast or slow, when we talk about fast fashion, can you give us an example of what we mean, a few examples, what it is, and okay, go ahead.
We got Zara, H&M, maybe you have more.
Bershka and the online platforms like Shein or Shein.
Right. So fast fashion isn't just something that's come in the digital age. It's something that's been with us for some time. In a way, I guess it's sort of the IKEA of clothes, right? So you can have lots of it for very cheap and often. And I guess the danger with that, in a way, you're saying, is because we pay so little, we don't care if we throw it away after a couple of months or a year or two and then get a new one. Whereas before, when we were paying for more costly clothes, they were better quality, we would wear them for much longer, so we would be producing less, right? So I guess the problem is kind of a problem of education in some ways, a problem of our economic models, it's a problem of just consumerism, which is a common theme in our series. What are some solutions? Let's keep focusing on textiles. What are some solutions that you guys found to reduce emissions from the textile sector?
The first solution is boycotting fast fashion.
So is that the number one problem with textiles? Is boycotting fast fashion the number one way of reducing emissions? Is that like the best way of doing it?
We actually have several things to do. there's new research that can help us. Like, for example, we talked about it in our presentation, but digital mirror that could help us to visualize a dress on us, and therefore make us choose before actually buying.
Okay, so the idea being that you have an image of your body on a website where you buy clothes, and then you can see what you would look like in those clothes without having to actually go it, so you don't buy something that you might throw away.
Yeah, we know that Snapchat already do that, and there's a brand that I don't remember the name, but they're actually doing real mirrors that you can install in your house, or maybe or maybe in shops to visualize the dress before you buy it.
That's interesting. I can see the advantage of something like that, but I wonder if it's not also something that might incite you to buy stuff more, because now you can see it without being there. So I think that might be a bit of a double-edged sword. Are there any solutions you found in the way we produce textiles, or the way? So what I'm trying to say is that clearly the number one thing to do is to change our behavior when it comes to textiles. Are there technological solutions to producing the textiles that we do but polluting less, or no?
Yes, for the time being, digital fashion remains a minor solution. It is not yet accessible to everyone, and is limited to haute couture and luxury. So that's why in our presentation we first proposed solutions that are implemented on our own scale, such as recycling, upcycling.
What is upcycling?
It's when we take several garments we no longer wear, or scraps of fabrics for the enterprise.
For example, two clothes, and you assemble them to have one piece
create a new
that are
okay. So it's a form of recycling where we're not just sort of throwing away the clothes into a recycling bin, but we're actually using what we have as fabric for some new thing that we make. Okay, that's interesting. That's called upcycling.
Yeah, the advantage is that you can do it homemade.
Yeah,
you're not obligated to buy it in thrift or shops.
Do any of you guys upcycle?
I've tried once, but
does anybody here know how to sew or to make any kind of clothes?
I tried it with my grandma.
My sister do that.
Do any of your parents know how to sew?
Yeah.
Okay. That's it's a lost art, I think, but I think there's more and more of the younger generation who are, because of environmental reasons, are trying to go into more the idea of, okay, I'm going to make my own clothes for mine, but it's still a pretty exclusive niche. Pauline, I think you had a question.
But instead of we can change our habits, but can we use fewer or not toxic products to create textile or clothes instead of changing or doing digital fashion?
Yes, but at the scale of brands or governments, because at our scale it's complicated. But brands or governments can try to avoid and regulate the manufacture of textiles with toxic products and privilege the natural fibers,
which emit more carbon because you have to go through animals and plants. Okay, it seems to me that the only real solution that can make a difference ends up being recycling and just sort of consuming less, right? Which is, I think, in general, a good idea, right? I think if we use better quality and we consume less frequently, and we have things that last longer in general, that seems like a good way of doing things that worked in the past. But then again, it becomes a question of education and losing the mindset of, I have to change my clothes every 6 months. If I don't have a new clothes for the new school year, then it's bad. It's more a psychological change than it is a technological one. Okay, maybe we can come back to a few of the other industries. Let's talk cement. Cement is such a big factor in our overall production of carbon and greenhouse gases. So there was one question from one of your classmates who said, it's crazy that cement produces 3 times more carbon emissions than aviation, and that's all we talk about, taking less flights. So why is that? Why is that we don't talk as much about cement? Why is it that we're focusing on something which is much less of a factor realistically when it comes to numbers, and here we have cement, which is a huge contributor, and nobody talks about that as something to change?
So we believe it's due to several factors. First, the aviation industry is highly visible and receives significant media coverage. And
but
also,
isn't cement visible? Like, there are buildings all around us, right? We're living in cement.
Yes, but it's mostly because of the perception. Cement is seen as more crucial, and
Right. That's it.
air travel is often sees like a luxury for rich people.
So we can not fly, but we can't not be in buildings, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So we can not fly, but we can't not be in buildings, right? It's still, given how important it is in terms of its contribution, there has to be solutions that come from modifying how we use, create, consume, produce cement, right? Yeah. Do you want to talk to us a little bit about some of these possibilities?
The major problem about cement is that it is used in developed countries. For example, in France, that are developed countries, there's no more construction or big constructions. But in other countries like India, for example, they are building houses every day, every hour. So they are using a lot of cement.
Because it's a question of development, right? There's a sort of correlation between how much cement we use and we consume and how we're developing. And you're saying that in developed countries, development is much more slow because it's already done. But that means that historically we've already done a huge contribution in terms of carbon through our development, and the new developing countries are not quite there historically, but they're getting there and very quickly. Okay, how can we can't tell people not to build houses. We can't not use cement. We don't have any other materials which would be a good replacement.
Yes, we have.
We do. That's good news.
In France, the Hoffman cement is currently under development, but is also used, and it divides the carbon footprint of Portland cement by 5. So it's not just a research project. It has been proven to have a positive impact on carbon footprint, even at a national scale. And the only negative thing is that it's currently most expensive that traditional cement. Therefore, the company, the governments must help the company to develop and grow to maybe reach an international scale one day.
The problem, I guess, with that is that it takes time, and time is what we have the least of when it comes to our carbon emissions. Pauline, I think you had a question.
So it's not really affordable for like India or not really developed countries, but so for these countries, is there like any solution for them, or just like we have to wait until someone does?
I don't want to be pessimistic, but currently there is no technical solutions that can be implemented at scale for countries like India that have 1.2 billion inhabitants. 0.5, yeah. 1.5 billion inhabitants. So solutions is like recycling cement and put it in new constructions, but at scale it doesn't work, or it doesn't have enough impact.
Right. And it requires also that countries with the technology for better cement, for them to share that with the countries who don't have it, because otherwise they're going to use the cheaper, more traditional ways, which is also the more polluting way, right? Okay. It's not very optimistic, huh? The outlook here. I get the impression that at least with cement, it's going to be a tough go. textiles, I think we said that the idea is really consume less and just, change our behaviors, which leaves us with petrochemicals. What can we do to improve emissions from petrochemicals? I don't see a lot of optimistic faces around me here.
It's almost the same thing that for cement. Like, of course, there's research that found things that are possible to do to decrease the emissions of CO2 or greenhouse gases, but they cost much more money to install. Talking about factories or even for the primal material.
Right, primary materials, yeah.
So many of the companies will try to have the best quality for the cheaper price, and for the moment plastic is the only one that can grant that. But maybe Mathis should find something, but I think that only biodegradable plastics and material will be useful in order to pollute less in seas or in every place of the world. But for the moment, it's really hard to find solutions for this industry.
This problem. Okay. Well, let's hope that one of you guys, when you are engineer or a scientist, you'll find a solution to this. I think what we saw with the group who was working on the carbon emissions from waste is that problems are not so simple as, okay, plastic's bad, paper good. No, there's the reason we use so much plastics, for example, is because it's really useful. It's almost like a miracle substance that does so many and cheap, and while we have oil still. But the problem is when things become cheap is that we tend to use it too much, and the problem is like the problem of an addict who has to reduce to get off that addiction, and it's never easy because it requires a radical change. I think that's the problem with most. Pauline, I don't know if you have any other questions remaining.
I was just a little confused about edge computing.
Right, we've really kind of neglected the whole high-tech sector, but at one point you guys mentioned the idea of edge computing as a means of reducing carbon emissions from the high-tech industry. What is this?
Edge computing is a modern approach to computing that involves processing data closer to its source rather than transmitting it to a central data center. In simpler terms, edge computing enables computing tasks to be performed on local server, and the approach is different from traditional computing where data is sent to a centralized location like a cloud server for processing. So there are several advantages to edge computing, including faster processing, reduced bandwidth, improved privacy, and resilience. And so it can also speed up response times and help saving bandwidth and lowering costs by sending less data over the network. However, it's important to note that edge devices may have less computing power than centralized one, and so it can limit the complexity of tasks they can perform.
All right, so I think we've gone through most of the topics. Is there anything that you guys want to mention as that we didn't cover through your researches and stuff? I think we did a good job. Yeah, Mathis?
Yeah, maybe to sum up everything, all is about the scale, the scales of clothes that are sold everywhere, the scale of cement and the petrochemical industry. So we have to find a solution, of course. But more than that, we have to find solutions that can be implemented at scale, and quickly.
Right. It's a question of scale in space and scale in time as well, in a way.
So, yeah, it's a pessimistic.
Right. So that's what I was going to say. Is that so? Where do you guys stand after having done this research? My question at the end is always, what did you find interesting or shocking or surprising that you didn't know of at all before? And How do you feel about that? Are you going to change something in your own behavior? What do you guys think? Let's go around the table and see what you guys think.
I think that today we can say that every effort, no matter how small, it will be a good step for our planet. And however, it's undeniable that industries play a significant role in greenhouse gas emission. But it's necessary for everyone to become aware of this issue in order to reduce their personal emission as well of those that are around them, like families or friends.
Right. So the question of, this is a question that's come a few times, is a question of, is this a problem that has to be dealt with individually, or is it beyond each individual? I think there is an individual responsibility, you're saying, but it seems also from the general opinion that it is beyond just individual actions and it has to be a systemic change. Yeah, Maelys?
Yes, at our scale, we can have less influence in industries such as cement or petrochemicals than high-tech and textile. Yeah, because we are direct consumers in textile and high-tech, and consuming drives production.
Right. So this is a very good point that, you as an individual are not going to be able to change much about when it comes to cement, but if you have a different approach to consumerism when it comes to electronics, when it comes to clothes, that can actually make a difference, at least in those sectors, which is not trivial or negligible. Myriam, any final thoughts through this research?
I've learned that AI can really help to improve, because it helped mostly to improve the optimizing the processes in mostly every industries, and so I think it's an idea for me to work on maybe in the future, because I find it really interesting.
So while it's actually itself a sort of what we're learning about the way AI, at least in our generation, is working, is pretty polluting in and of itself in terms of the energy consumption. But you're saying that you think that it's a powerful enough tool that the net gain in reduction of emissions is worth going further into this whole AI thing.
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe Mathis, for any final points on your own personal opinions on this research topic that you found?
I think that we all have a role to play at our personal scale. Everything we can do about ecology is important. But again, most of the responsibility is from companies, big companies, and from states also. So we have maybe a political fight or an economic fight to lead. But if we can, if at our scale we can do something, we have to do it.
Okay, so I see that you're fighting inside of you against the pessimism that is trying to come out, but by convincing yourself that no, there are things that we can do, which is good. That's what you have to do, especially when if the youth starts losing its optimism, then we're kind of screwed, right? All right, so thank you very much for your presentation. It was a very interesting topic. Not the easiest one, I think, compared to some of the other ones, but I personally learned a lot, and I think so did the classmates. So thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah.